We are from beyond time, born of water rather than flame, air, or earth. A whisper in time, rarely seen, and yet most cultures have stories of us. Sometimes we are depicted as friendly in their tales. Other times we're dangerous. Blessed by an old magic humankind can barely comprehend. My kind swam in waters before humans ever walked the earth, and our flesh, once touched by the divine, only to be thrust in the oceans under God's disapproving glare. We made the ocean our domain, and a curse soon turned into a blessing. Our whispers would influence the creatures from myth and the mundane world who shared the waters with us, and soon we became their protectors. My kind guided sailors, crossing dangerous oceans to victory or destruction, depending on whether we granted them favor or if they displeased us. We'd lure them close to the water and drag them down into the depths. Or we'd send them off course into the ocean to get lost at sea. Or crashing their ships into the rocky shorelines, spilling valuables and losing lives. Their bodies would never be recovered, forever the property of the gods of the waters, turning to stone to become part of the coral, and becoming part of the chorus of the dead. A truce was made to prevent suffering on either side, sealed in blood and oath. Theirs, the humans, domain was land, and ours were the waterways, oceans, and rivers. For some we became guides. They would leave offerings to us by the ocean, in hopes of favor for successful voyages. We were hidden from view, thought as myth or a conspiracy to a majority of humans. Our blood and flesh have properties that are beneficial to mankind. If consumed, humans will become healthier, have stronger libidos, become more beautiful, and develop a much longer lifespan. Ever wonder why some of your celebrities or members of the elite live a long time? We are the reason why. It was the action of one to change the fate of many. A legend of a poor fisherman who took a mermaid from the ocean, injured and wrapped inside a net, mistaking her for another creature, and in his hunger, took a mouthful of her flesh. He hadn't eaten in days. No, he was starving, while his threadbare clothing clung to his body. Blinking, immediately realizing his eyesight cleared, wealth was now attracted to him, and his impotence was cured. All from one simple bite. He first shared his secret with family and close friends, consuming the dying mermaid's flesh, soon extending it to people he wished to gain favor from. It only stopped when the mermaid passed away, and a bite was taken from dead flesh. It caused the human to become deathly ill. Furthermore, we became a target for humanity's greed. The truce was broken. We were stolen from the ocean using nets that even the strongest fangs cannot penetrate, nor claws destroy. Dragged onto boats prepared with cages, kept in tanks with barely enough water for survival, with our tongues cut out so our words could not punish them. Sold in a trade unknown to a majority of humans. We're too valuable to kill. A mermaid would have one of two distinct and deadly fates. One based in ancient rituals for the elite, or a modern, industrial push to get things out to consumers. Drained of blood and fluids, what isn't consumed is used in expensive pills, and skincare products to prolong or even create youth in aged humans. Below the water, a lingering passing, a void, a missing link now forsaken, without joining the chorus of the song from my kind. Drained until they passed away, the shock of being separated from our kin, or injured. Once we die, our blood causes the flesh to rot quickly. The corpses are thrown into the ocean, or chopped up to be used for food for their animals. Even our bones are used, since our flesh rots too quickly after death. Those who expire before their time on the boat are thrown overboard to feed the creatures who share the ocean with us. They carry the tales of what happened to them back to our elders. The disposal is done without care or ritual. Humans keep us alive. They need to keep us alive, using the harsh chill of compacted ice on our flesh when we're first brought overboard to cause us to drift into a forced sleep. Only our cousins from the frozen lands to the north and south are immune. The hardest to catch, the rarest find. After capture, our bodies are bound with steel rope to keep our tails still. Without their weapons and inventions, your kind would be helpless against us. The only time your feeble bodies are capable of overpowering us, preventing our escape through the use of metal bars, ice, and sedatives while we're taken to the location. The speed these deliveries take is incredible. Often my kind are pre-purchased for years in advance, or rarely, auctioned off in the millions. The healthiest, the biggest, and the youngest are the most favorable to humankind. The most expensive cuisine in the world. Family clans are broken, some forever. Verses of song now unsung for eternity. A missing void. Depending on the waters or the oceans, my kind varies in appearance. Some drastically, yet the greed of humankind remains the same. These events would attract members of the aristocracy, billionaires, and those in positions of power. None of the commoners are welcome. The events are secretive, invite-only affairs. There would be cages stationed inside large tanks, so they may inspect what was on offer. Some hosts would permit the mermaid to swim one last time, to speak without a tongue, with their hands on the glass of the tank, and staring out with pleading eyes. Most would watch in sadistic fascination, enjoying their suffering, and the few that had fleeting moments of compassion would ignore it in favor of social status. Music would play in the background, with waiters sworn to secrecy, carrying silver trays with champagne and tending to all the guest needs. Excitement was building until the grand finale of the feast to begin. The host would give a speech, a flex of their wealth and power, followed by polite clapping. The mermaid would be contained to a smaller pool until they were forced upright and held in place with metal bars. The announcement would be greeted with whispers while the preparations were made. They would gather around, saliva building in their mouths, and anticipation for the feast would begin, while a well-dressed butcher, a specialist, who trained for well over 40 years would stride toward the guests, giving a dignified bow to a round of applause, before unfolding an expensive lambskin cover to reveal a set of specialized knives for the task. A long, slender blade begins to slice from the hip down to the fins at the end of the tail, where a slither of bone would be seen. The mermaid's eyes would dart from side to side, gills flaring, chest rising and falling with growing dread, and a bolt would be driven into their neck, causing them to physically become motionless for the comfort of the crowd while inside. deep within their souls, they were screaming for help that could not arrive. They'd hear the collective call of their kin. Some would prefer the pure form, considered the proper method of dealing with our kind. The mermaid would be fully awake throughout the process. Still alive, it would scream, trapped and forsaken. They'd screech and struggle against the metal bars to keep them held in place, breaking bones in their hands in desperation to escape. Their cries heard out into the ocean to all the mermaid clans around the world. It would fall on deaf ears. The guests would be notified that their meal would begin. Using the large piece of flesh from the tail, it would be sliced into fillets and dressed with caviar with sea salt before being eaten raw by the guests. The first course of an impressive meal. It wouldn't stop. The left side would be sliced into one large piece, this time diced finely and mixed with the mermaid's blood. The delicate plates would be passed around. They'd be eaten to delighted conversation, and fresh ice would be thrown on the mermaid, temporarily easing its suffering, all to prolong its life and prevent it from bleeding out. The race was now on to continue the task before it bled out or went into shock. Next, flesh will be taken from the arms, a knife slicing along the bone to pull off. Served slightly differently, sauteed with fresh butter and served in bite-sized pieces. The exposed femur bones would be chipped into with a tiny mallet to break it open. The rich bone marrow will be scooped out and offered to guests. Soft, fatty, and delicious. They'll grow more excited with every course that would follow. Each body part used to grant benefits to certain parts of the human body. Next, the breast would slowly be sliced from her torso, exposing the rib cage, and traditionally offered to the host's wife or the female guest of honor. Then the abdomen will be sliced open, the skin pulled apart to show the organs, while the guests would marvel at the sight. Each organ was feasted on, each served in new ways, and leaving only the lungs and the heart. The gills would swell trying to compensate. The heart would have pieces shaved off at a draw, careful not to injure it too greatly. The pieces curled and given to the guests. The scale and bones on top of their heads, in place of hair, would be pulled back, using heavy gloves to avoid the poisonous spikes. The skull is gently cracked and peeled open, breaking it to reveal the brain, and a hushed murmur of exhilaration filled the gathered audience. They'd be offered a piece of the brain stirred with a spoon, mixed with butter, and a piece of bread dunked inside it. Then the glorious finale would be reached, the eyeballs still twitching and moving, only to be pulled out with a spoon. The left one first, rich and fatty. They are usually eaten by the host or the guests of the party. All the remaining pieces of flesh are too foul-tasting or poisonous to consume. Once those final pieces are taken, the living corpse is studied, barely moving and clinging to life. Barely conscious of who they were, what they were. Their edema fluid is drained, mixed with white wine, and poured into shot glasses before being shared with the entire party. The hosts will be toasted for their power by grateful guests who benefited from their kindness. Deals will be signed, alliances made, and egos pacified. Reaching the conclusion, the event was at an end. The host would give the mermaid a deep, dignified bow in gratitude for sharing their gifts with them and their guests. Some would fall to their knees before the trembling, still living corpse. The mermaid was beyond speech now. A blessing. The host's spouse would be dressed completely in red, while wearing a mask with no facial features. Every guest places their hand on a nail, resting on a red velvet cushion, with a blank mask crafted in obsidian resting on it. When they pass each guest, they start murmuring a thank you for your sacrifice, for them to function. O glorious being from the ocean, O blessed one with divine blood. Finally, the spouse will move to stand by the host. The host accepts the mask, concealing their identity from God and their disgraced and their gathered audience. Then they walk up the stairs near the tank. The mallet is held up while the guests bow their heads and chant their thanks. A single nail, traditionally driven into the top of the brainstem, known as the mercy nail. The final killing blow. A loud crack, and the pain was over. For the time being, their suffering was at an end. My kind hear a whisper, a cry for help, with no satisfaction. There is still no rest for their victim. More indignities were to follow. Even in death they do not know peace. The corpse is dried out and preserved using salt or alcohol, or they would keep them in fluid to slow the decay. A sign of prestige if someone happens to own one, even more so if they could afford multiple. They would be sealed, re-stitched and taxidermied to look how they did when they were alive. Then posed with their fangs, spikes, and clawed web hands bared. Their bodies stuffed and painted to make them look lifelike. In the early days, whole bodies preserved now slumber inside a museum. A sign of humanity's power over nature. If a family had one body from all the mermaid clans, it was considered prestigious. A prize. Blue-blooded, long-established families would have several on display, hidden deep in their estates, protected through trusts, to ensure their assets stay within the family. Paintings, photographs, and plaques are made with the date each mermaid was feasted on. While new monies seek out one to elevate themselves in their eyes of their peers through bribery, theft, and intrigue. Ever see a new or old family's fortunes suddenly disappear, surrounded by scandals? They were no longer invited to these ceremonies, or had lost the mermaids' preserved bodies. Denied the fortune and health benefits, with the whispering curse of the mermaid following them wherever they went. It would reap its revenge. For each mermaid seized and stolen from the ocean, the punishment would reap all. Once a human starts consuming a mermaid's flesh, they must continue. A sin without end. Over the course of human history, thousands, perhaps millions have been taken, kept in secret vaults, butchered and drained. Peace talks are now at an end, and my kind have grown angry. Each indignity has become too much to bear. Too long have we suffered the loss of our loved ones. Some of the mermaids, youth who wish to grow up safe inside the oceans, have begun using humans in a similar fashion, dragging them down below the depths and locking them inside isolated air pockets where they would live in fear. Their bodies torn, twisted until nothing but fragmented remains, while their limbs rotted from being in the water for too long. They'd be kept far beyond where human technology could manage to scan them, so they'd never be located. I believe their families and the world above believe them to be dead, simply lost to sea, or their bodies would never be claimed. The whispers of their holy men left unspoken, their souls damned, and forever they'd be our playthings. We gave a warning, a final chance of redemption. The footwear from those we have taken captives, with pieces of bone and remnants of rotting flesh inside them. They were found along the coastline for members of the general public to see, to finally understand they had gone too far. We left messages on the coral reefs and started to make ourselves known. They'd see us on the shoreline and seize them, taking them below the depths as our tribute. Yet it only seemed to increase fascination with our kind. Your species have forgotten how to show respect, and no longer remember why your ancestors fled the oceans for the safety of the land. Why sacrifices were made with the blood of humans sprayed into the waves in hopes of our mercy while crossing the seas. Since the peace talks have been ignored, now it is an open declaration of war. Now we will take humans as an offering. For each of ours is taken, we will take one of yours. And for every year these crimes go unpunished, the numbers will only increase. All until our oceans are safe, and your kind should thank the gods that our time on land is limited. In particular, blue bloods who have taken others of my kind should be careful. Why do you think technology to fly became so prominent? Have you noticed more people have been taken by the oceans? Drownings, disappearances, accidents. Ghost ships where everything is in order, but the crew are all missing, with no explanation as to why. People called into the water before swimming out into the depths willingly, losing their lives in the process. I want you to know that it was us. And this is why the mermaids seek revenge. Stay out of our oceans. Your ancestors feared and escaped the ocean long ago. And now, we're determined to make you remember. I hope you enjoy this story. What did you think of it? Let me know what you thought in the comments section down below. Don't forget to stab the like button, subscribe, hit the bell and leave a comment. This video is made with the support of my incredible channel members, Patreon subscribers and all my viewers. Thank you so much for supporting me. Don't forget to check out my social media accounts below, including my merch. Stay safe, my little spooklings. And remember, I'll be watching you.